everyone. This is another Mold Talks. Thank you for joining us here. I'm your host, Michael Rubino, author of The Mold Medic. And I have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Cassandra. And Cassandra, go ahead and introduce yourself and just kind of, explain a little bit about who you are and why you're here.
I'm Cassandra. I live in the Southwest United States, and I got sick in around 2018. I'm a mom of two, and I am now diagnosed with a fungal disease, but definitely think that the mold had a part to play.
Okay. And you just had another baby?
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank
That
you.
is awesome. So, obviously I want to really acknowledge you and appreciate you for coming forward and sharing your story today. The whole idea of Mold Talks is to kind of empower others who may be facing similar challenges, going through something very similar to what you went through, and maybe they're not aware, that their environment is at hand or at cause for it. So thank you so much for, building up the courage to come on here today and share your story. Thank you. I want to get right into it and ask questions that are really helpful, such as, when did you first notice that you weren't feeling well?
Well, in 2018, I was pregnant, and, it was all chalked up to like pregnancy symptoms, but it was just more than that. It was just headaches, grogginess, lack of function, memory, just not there, foggy pretty much.
Sure.
And even we used to have prior roommates, and I remember my prior roommate used to get headaches all the time and would always have to take naps and have migraines. And I don't remember her ever complaining about after she moved out. So it was just very clear it was probably the mold.
Right. No, I understand. And how did you, what happened, or how did you first figure out that mold was impacting your health?
Well, when we ripped apart our kitchen, we were remodeling the house. And we ripped apart the kitchen and we found it behind the people who had remodeled it didn't put, you can get mold proof gypsum board for the, I'm sorry, I'm not a builder, but
like the moisture resistant drywall.
Yes, it was not moisture resistant. So you could just see all of the mold. They just had done it improperly.
Yeah, now I see that a lot where improper renovations, construction, etc. Can leave areas weak that need to be strong, especially with regards to water intrusion, moisture, etc. So you uncovered it basically in a renovation completely by accident. And what happened? Did you have like a mold remediator come in or?
We didn't. My husband is a builder and, is pretty familiar with that stuff. So he just did it himself, but like ripped the kitchen and did it properly because he builds houses for a living.
Awesome. So he was able to kind of locate the issue, find the right information of how to deal with it properly, and he took care of it.
Yeah, we decided to do hydrogen peroxide instead of bleach because that's what we had read.
It's a fantastic choice. Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm glad you guys did that. And about how long was that mold festering behind the wall before you guys actually did the renovation? So how long were you actually exposed to it?
The house was owned for 6 years before we ripped apart the kitchen.
So you had all that exposure for 6 years. Your health was declining. And finally you found it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, a lot of my clients, they'll tell me they go from doctor to doctor, sometimes doctor to doctor and doctor to doctor, before they finally find someone who suggests to check their air quality. It sounds like you may have stumbled on this on your own. Did you have any doctors that were in the mix?
Doctor to doctor. So, it was like a confirmation when we found it. I don't think, I haven't talked to a doctor about it, but I'm pretty sure it played a part, but no, I had been going to doctor. They had said it's your asthma. It's just your pregnancy, your asthma gets worse. It's your and then when it moved, more symptoms moved to like my stomach. I couldn't eat, I couldn't gain weight. I wasn't holding food down very well. There was a point where I was eating like 200 calories a day. It's just chalk it up to a virus. So it just kept getting blamed on other stuff. And then finally, right before I gave birth, I got diagnosed with meningitis and another fungal disease. And, postpartum, we had the money and I was able to live with my aunt with the baby. And that's when we decided to remodel the kitchen, take advantage of that time. And that's when we found all the black mold. And in my mind, it was like, oh, I had been lowering my immune system that whole time.
Wow. Yeah, and it's so frustrating to go from doctor to doctor being misdiagnosed. And I'm glad that you did decide to do that renovation and find it. Without doctors' helps, because obviously at that point you had to be your own advocate for your health. And yeah, very frustrating. I mean, I can't tell you how many stories that I hear where you're going to doctors, you're getting misdiagnosed. They're not even checking or thinking to check about air quality. And for me, it's so frustrating because air is one of the most important parts of our environment. I mean, the air that we breathe really impacts our health. There's genetics, there's the environment, there's predispositions. And just far too often do we not look at the environment as part of this process. So, and I'm glad you found it.
Stories I see are just, it's always blamed as a virus. And it's like, there's so many other pathogens in the world to like look at for, your lungs. And like you said, air quality, there's mold and yeast and fungus. So yeah, it is.
And even viruses, most viruses transmit through the air, right? So the air is a very important part of our world, and so it's baffling to me how more doctors aren't saying, hey, let's look at the genetics piece. Let's also look at any predispositions. Let's also look at the environment. To me, it's a no-brainer. So tell me, what were some of your symptoms?
Definitely. I mean, mine progressed because I did get another fungal disease, which I think because my immune system was lowered by the black mold. We have valley fever here in the Southwest, so I contracted that. It's also a lung fungus. But before that, even like I said, the roommate who had lived with us prior, it was just always migraine in the afternoon, foggy head, tired, struggle keeping on weight, just kind of like, things that you would just push aside when you're young, like stress or whatever you think it would be.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And it's very common, the symptoms that you mentioned, a lot of people talk about with respects to mold exposure. So it makes a lot of sense. And I know that it's frustrating when you're going through that, especially at the time, for, people not to suggest air quality at that point in time, which, could have helped you suffer less than 6 years, throughout that time.
Yeah. But, I don't know if, I would have been so immune compromised. Maybe I would have never gotten that other fungal disease if I would have known or had a clean environment.
That's true. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of why we're doing this here today, why we're here today, is to kind of, help people maybe connect some dots and get the help they need so that they could, really find that answer faster. So thank you very much for being vulnerable today and sharing your story. I want to know, how did mold impact your life in terms of your daily activities?
I mean, I used to just work because I lived in a different house before, and I used to just work 3 jobs, super active. I never drove. I didn't have a license, so I would skateboard and bicycle and really just was a very, very active person. And it declined. It got harder and harder to be on top and juggle a million things and be really active. And I find myself taking Ubers more and not riding my bike and asking for rides. And it just, I would get more tired and less active as time went on.
Yeah, I'm sorry you went through that. I know that's frustrating. Do you remember the worst day that you've ever had to experience in dealing with this illness?
Well, I mean, the days when you get the migraine headaches are the worst. Like, because it would be spontaneous, but yeah, just awful headaches where you just be in bed all day, waste your life away. And sometimes ibuprofen wouldn't cut it, and just dark room, ice. So, and I remember my roommate would spend days like that too. Those were probably the worst days.
Yeah. Yeah. So with you, there was no like iconic worst day. It was just basically any day that you had a headache, in that migraine debilitating manner where you're stuck in bed all day, those are you would categorize together as like the worst days.
Yeah, because it interrupted my life and the pain was horrible and I didn't know what was going on. And, you chalk it up to hormonal. Like once I found the mold, it's like a light bulb goes off and you're like, oh,
yeah.
Because the whole time when you're just wondering what's wrong with you, it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. And, I know that light bulb moment can be, upsetting and exciting at the same time. Upsetting because, now it has to be dealt with, which it sounds like you guys were prepared to do. So that was good. But exciting because you're like, okay, now I know what's wrong. Now I can fix it. Now I can do something about it.
And look out for it again,
And look, yeah. And educate yourself to avoid it and look out for it and keep away from it, which is, is key as well. When did you start to feel better?
Well, I mean, even the psychological knowing that my husband had redone the kitchen and had ripped out all the mold made me feel better. I don't know if, just the psychological of knowing it's gone. But yeah, when I moved back into my house after they had remodeled and regutted everything, I did feel like I felt slightly better. I mean, I am on antifungal medication, but
right. Yeah, and it's a journey, right? It's a road to recovery. And that's why I say, when did you start to feel better? Because for some, it in the time that I'm talking, unless it's been many years ago, there can be a while as you're detoxifying and your body kind of adjusts, and the environment's no longer impacting you and things like that. But
yeah,
no, that's good. So you started to feel it as soon as you moved back in. It kind of started.
yeah. I would say functional, maybe not completely better. I've gotten better and better as I go on. But and I also did extreme diet changes. I try to stay away from sugar.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach. It's about improving your environment, improving your diet. What goes into the body, whether you involuntarily eat it or breathe it, is important, right? So I think it's kind of that holistic approach, and I'm glad that you kind of looked and changed as much as you could, in terms of fixing the environment and then also getting the diet.
So yeah, it's been a journey, but I mean, I would say after I moved back in, it took around like 6 months for me to feel like, I would say there's a versus better versus functional, and
Right.
maybe 6 to feel more functional.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're doing better, and that's the good point of this story, is that something can be done about it. You can take control back over your life and start to feel better. What would you recommend to others who are facing similar challenges?
Ask so many questions and do your own, I guess, research on your local mold and diseases. Because, after this happened, I'm from Minnesota, and I looked up and saw that there's like blasto, and here there's valley fever, and there's just so many other fungus and mold diseases. And so just be aware of the different things in your environment that can affect you, I guess.
No, it's great advice. Being aware of your surroundings is important. It's kind of, when I do remediation, it's kind of similar. You have to understand like what's going on outside around you. And some geographical locations, you may have one specific species more prevalent than others, and you don't get that same. It's never exactly the same. So it's very good advice to look at your environment, see what's going on in the area around you, so that you can be better prepared to make good decisions.
Just keep asking doctors until one will listen to you.
Yeah, I think if you're with a doctor and they're dismissing how you feel, right, as a psychological effect, get a second opinion, of course, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Is there times where there could be psychological issues? Of course, but that shouldn't be the first determination. It should be, did you check your environment? What are how are you eating? What's your diet look like? What's your blood work look like? What's your urine work look like? We should be doing diagnostics, not just right off the bat saying, this is psychological, which, we don't want to be written off as crazy when we're trying to express how we feel and asking for help. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good tip as well. And so Cassandra, is there any last words that you have for guests who are listening?
Yeah, I guess if you rent or even buy a house, just look at the bones. I wish we would have just look at the bones of the house and make sure your landlord or you can make sure that the building is good, I guess, because there's hidden enemies.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Cassandra. Thanks for helping me raise the volume on such an important topic. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, for getting on with me and sharing your story. I'm quite certain that it's going to help others who may be experiencing similar issues. Thank you so much, Cassandra, and I wish you well.